December has come and Christmas has also arrived a little bit early, courtesy of Grandfather Nurgle, who brings the first of the brand new detachments that each and every faction is getting over the course of this month, and will of course be bringing a fresh set of rules, stratagems, and enhancements for everyone to play around with, no matter which army you play. So that is a really exciting little bit of news. We have got a lot to go through and look forward to over this month, with every single faction, as I said, getting a whole new detachment to get excited about. But starting things off is the Flyblown host for the Death Guard. Now, their current detachment was initially one of the weakest alongside their army rules. They were in a very bad place at the beginning of 10th edition, so this is a very welcome addition to their army, despite the improvements that the Plague Company has had over the course of 10th edition, and it is actually a fairly decent detachment now, but it is always nice to get a new one when they were off to such a rocky start. The army rule remains the same, with their contagion range giving you a nice aura of reduced toughness to the enemy. But now, instead of the sticky objectives and the further contagion range debuffs of either -1 to enemy saves, -1 to enemy OC and leadership, or -1 to enemy weapon and ballistic skill thanks to the detachment rule of spread the sickness, now instead, if you run the new detachment, you get the Verminous Haze rule. And I, for one, really like this. It's very straightforward, but very powerful for the Death Guard. All your infantry units that aren't embarked on a transport gain the Scout 5-inch rule and also gain Stealth. Now, these are two incredibly good buffs for an army like Death Guard. With your slow, plodding 4 or 5-inch move, this Scout move effectively gives you a free entire movement phase to get up the board a little bit more and just start to spread that contagion to the enemy that much sooner, as well as get up and onto those key objectives or into some good cover, or just closer to the enemy to get some charges off much faster than your opponent may have ever expected from your army. And of course, it's great on your slow moving things like your Plague Marines or your Death Shroud Terminators, but also it's just a really nice ability to have on something like your Poxwalkers, who can now move up that 5 inches and be a screening unit much more effectively to possibly prevent some charges or just generally protect your more valuable units. It is all round one of the most impactful things that they could have given to an infantry focused foot slogging Death Guard army, I think. But that isn't all you get, because on top of that you also gain the stealth rule for your infantry units, so that is that always useful -1 to be hit. So now not only are you getting up the board that much quicker thanks to Scout, but your already decent durability is even better. Your Poxwalkers will now not just be toughness 4 with 1 wound and 5 up feel no pain, but they will also be much harder to hit thanks to stealth, and then your really tanky units, like things like the Death Shroud, they will now be toughness 6 with a 2-up save, a 4-up invuln, 3 wounds, potentially -1 to be wounded against strength 7 attacks or above if they've got a character with them, and also -1 to be hit. And all of that adds up to meaning that 10 las cannon shots being fired into them from Marines will, on average, not even manage to kill 2 of them. So it just makes them even more scary than they were before, especially when you combo it with the fact that they are going to be 5 inches closer to your opponent's lines and potentially able to get up in their face much faster than they ever could have done before. It is just all around a really strong set of rules for the Death Guard, and it massively shores up one of their big weaknesses in their mobility, and of course just adds to their other strength, which is their durability, by making them even more difficult to kill as they move up the board and get into position and get onto objectives. But what I really like about this as well is that it's not flat out better or worse than the Plague Company. Both of them have a lot of pros and cons and advantages compared to the other, so I do think that depending on the makeup of your list, how you like to play the game, how you like to play your army, and what you like to bring model-wise, they can both be better, but they can both bring a lot of value. And so for me, the fact that one is not a flat-out better than the other version does make them a very good kind of comparable set of detachments, and for me that means it is a winning detachment when it isn't one that you will auto take, but also isn't one that you're just going to flat out ignore. On top of that, we also get the usual 4 enhancements and 6 stratagems. The enhancements are a solid little mix, although it's worth noting they are Death Guard infantry only, so unfortunately none of these can go on a Demon Prince, but still we do start off strong with Droning Chorus, which is a nice 15-point one to give your bearer and his unit the assault rule on their weapons. So now letting you advance and still shoot on top of the scout move, meaning you can potentially be getting 11 inches more movement from your unit than you could before, which for an army like the Death Guard is absolutely massive. Like that's potentially 2 turns worth of movement extra and still being able to shoot. Insectile Murmuration is next and is a bit pricier at 20 points, but nets you a fantastic rule of reroll wound rolls of 1 if the enemy target is in contagion range of 1 or more Death Guard units. So this doesn't have to be the unit shooting. If you manage to get a Demon Prince or a Bloat Drone or a Blight Hauler up and into contagion range of an enemy, then all the shooting from the unit that your character with this enhancement is with is going to be re-rolling 1s to wound. And of course, when you get into melee, you will always be getting it because of course you're going to be in engagement range when your unit's in melee. So getting this will be adding a huge amount of damage to not only your shooting, but in particular things like your Death Shrouds with their Man Reaper scythes. They are going to really love those reroll 1s to wound. Rejuvenating Swarm is the cheapest option at 10 points and it seems brilliant. Just fully healing all of your lost wounds on a character at the end of each phase, so it's going to be almost impossible to kill off a character that has this. Unfortunately, the fact you can't put this on a Demon Prince does make it a lot less exciting, but it is still great and it will absolutely be good on a character that you want to keep safe from things like precision or as their squad slowly gets whittled down so that even when they're by themselves, they can just keep on trucking and playing the game, being almost impossible to kill. Like unless your opponent can confidently kill them in one phase, it's almost not even worth shooting or fighting into them. So I do think it is definitely worth 10 points. It would be borderline broken if you could put it on a Demon Prince. Finally, the Plague Vial is the priciest at 25 points. This nets you a semi-lone operative style rule for the bearer and his unit. It makes them untargetable by enemy attacks if they are within range of an objective marker that you control and the enemy attacking unit is over 18 inches away. And this of course will mean your unit is practically invulnerable if they are sat back on a midfield or an objective on your side of the board. All of that scary long range firepower from things like Devastators or that indirect shooting that is in the game is going to be utterly wasted against this unit because they just will not be able to target them. So whilst 18 inches isn't the biggest distance, like a lot of enemy units can get within that range, it's still going to save you from a considerable amount of enemy shooting. So this one is again, I think, just a great all-round useful enhancement to throw on a character that is going to be sat back with a squad holding an objective on your side of the board. So it's pretty much 4 for 4 useful, well-priced enhancements, I think, and I can honestly see a combination of all of them being used in games depending on what your battle plan is, what units you want to bring, and what units you want to make practically indestructible. So it's a really good, fun set of rules and bonuses there. Finally, we get the 6 new stratagems as well, and again, this is a rather brilliant selection. All of them are a nice cheap 1 command point, and all of them, I would say, are at least somewhat useful. Nauseating Paroxysms is in the fight phase. You pick an infantry unit and an enemy unit in engagement range of it, and it has to take a battle shock test at -1 to their leadership. So this is potentially the swingiest of the bunch, I would say, but could in theory make it so that an enemy that was going to interrupt in combat can't anymore if they're battle shocked, or can't use some of their other stratagems they were going to take advantage of, or suddenly finds themselves to be OC0, so now they can't steal the objective they wanted to. So it can be very, very powerful and a really unpleasant surprise if your opponent isn't expecting it. The only downside, of course, is that it is a battle shock test, so it's not going to be the most reliable thing. A lot of units have good leadership, so even at -1 leadership, they're still going to have a reasonable chance of passing it. Droning Horror is in your shooting phase. This lets an infantry unit reroll hit rolls of 1 or get full rerolls if the enemy is within half range. So it's really nice and really simple, but can be very helpful on some of your squads to get the most out of things like their plasma, their bolters, and their blight launchers. So it's a good stratagem. I would say again, the downside, you aren't the most shooty army, especially not on your infantry. So this isn't going to make any of your units super powerful, but it can make it that much easier to, I don't know, shoot an enemy off an objective or something like that if you are trying to take it from them. Vermin Cloud is back to the fight phase. This is again put on an infantry unit. This one is incredibly powerful. It gives your unit a 6-inch pile-in or consolidate instead of the regular 3-inch. Now, movement is king in 40k. Everyone knows that, so getting that extra movement in the fight phase and the ability to move onto objectives or move and tag other enemy units to tie them up or just keep you safe from certain enemy shooting is game-winningly powerful. So this is a really brilliant stratagem, and if you use it well, it is going to absolutely be a stratagem you will be using as often as you possibly can to get the most leverage out of your slow movement and just get the most of your units into the enemy, up into the enemy, onto objectives, and just tying as much of the enemy army down as you possibly can. Enervating Onslaught is again on an infantry unit. This one is after you've made a charge move with a unit. You pick an enemy unit in engagement range of yours, excluding monsters and vehicles, and you roll a d6 for each model in your unit in engagement range, and on a 5+, that enemy unit takes a mortal wound up to a maximum of 6. And you also get to add 1 to the roll if your charging unit isn't a cultist or a poxwalker. So basically charging with your Terminators or your Plague Marines will get you mortal wounds on a 4+. So throwing in 10 Plague Marines into an enemy means on average you're going to be getting 5 mortal wounds into the enemy, which can definitely add up, and it gives you just that nice extra bit of pre-fight phase damage to help soften up enemies, maybe kill off a Terminator or something before the opponent can swing back into you. Eye of the Swarm is next. This is back to your shooting phase. This gives your ranged weapons the pistol rule as long as they are not blast. So all of the things like your blight launchers, your bolters, your plague spewers and your plasma guns, even things like your Reaper autocannons on your blight lords, they can now be pistol and fire when you are stuck in combat. So essentially this can give you a bonus shooting phase, and again, while shooting isn't your main strength as the Death Guard, an extra shooting phase is very handy, and it will definitely let you kill off an enemy squad that may be trying to lock you down and tie you up in combat. So it's a really useful, good to have stratagem to have in your back pocket just to use when you really need to get out of a combat against an opponent that is just trying to bog you down. Finally, we have Mephitic Invigoration. This is put on infantry, but it does require a Blight Hauler. And you choose a unit that is being targeted by your opponent's shooting, and they are within 6 inches of a Blight Hauler. Your unit is within 6 inches of a Blight Hauler, and the enemy shooting is at -1 to wound if the strength of the attack is higher than your unit's toughness. So letting you essentially get the Death Shrouds rule on your other infantry units. So really bringing things like your Plague Marines to obscene levels of durability, but even giving things like your Poxwalkers a lot more staying power alongside the stealth and the 5-up feel no pain that they have. Overall, I think it is just, as I said, a great set of stratagems and a really great set of enhancements. I can see all of them getting a lot of use in the game, and because the stratagems are all 1 CP, that's really good because I think they will all get a lot of use a lot of the time in the game. You will almost always at least have a few command points to use on a few of these every single battle round. So it's a really nice set of enhancements, really nice set of strats, a really nice detachment rule. So all in all, it is just a very good detachment, but I don't think it is outright better than the Plague Company, and you do give up a lot by taking this one. The extra contagion range debuffs that you get in the Plague Company are very good, so you do have to weigh up whether it's worth that cost, and I think depending on how you bring your army, if you are going very infantry focused and a very foot slogging style list, this one could be well worth considering. But I like the fact that it isn't just an easy pick of one or the other. They both have a lot of good going for them, and that to me is the sign of a good set of detachments. So I really like this. It is getting these 30 new detachments that are coming over the month off to a really, really good start. So I can see this being played quite a lot with the Death Guard. I think a lot of people are going to at least try it out and see how it works, you know, giving up the Rhino transports they were maybe taking before and just using that 5-inch scout to make up for it and free up, you know, 100 or 200 points for an extra unit of Plague Marines or something like that. I think it will add a lot of versatility and also a lot of durability to a foot slogging Death Guard list. So I'm really excited to see how it performs and if we start seeing it in any competitive lists. But as always, what do you think of this detachment? Do you like it? Do you think the strats and enhancements are good? And how do you think it compares to the Plague Company? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.